Hello and welcome to today's episode of Platinum Talks Wealth. Emmy Nominated journalist Jennifer Rogers Markwell changed gears in her television career when she realized the need to help women make sense of investing. She regularly hosts educational workshops to empower women and others to take charge of their financial future. Now, join your host, Platinum Wealth Management President Jennifer Rogers Markwell, as she leads us into the world of money memories, money infidelities, and how these can mold our relationship with our personal finances as adults. Let's dive into today's episode.
Hi, and thanks so much for joining us on today's Platinum Talks Wealth podcast. I'm Jennifer Rogers Markwell, and today we're joined by Kim Anderson. Kim, thanks so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Tell us who you are and why you do what you do.
I am a passionate traveler at heart. I am a free spirit who really finds the greatest joy in experiencing new things in life. And I created the podcast to share other people's stories that are so inspirational in hopes to help inspire other people to design the life of their dreams.
So how did the travel bug bite you? Like, how did you end up here doing what you're doing?
To be honest, I think it's just such an innate part of me, and I didn't realize it until later in life when I kind of look back at my childhood. You know, my parents, we didn't travel a lot. We didn't have a lot of money, but we did do camping excursions, and we took one big family holiday one year, all the way down the east coast of Florida to Key West and back up the west coast in a matter of a week. It was like so much driving. But I was the kid that always said yes to slumber parties, Girl Scout excursions, 4-H trips, conferences, anything that could get me out into the world. And so I moved to Hawaii after graduation, fell in love with the ocean, started traveling after that, and pretty much spent the better part of 2 decades as a global citizen.
Wow, that is quite the journey.
Yeah, it's awesome. And much of my travel has been I've traveled the world by sea. So from a girl growing up in the Midwest to a woman who has traveled the world by sea, it has been a pretty incredible journey.
So traveling by sea, I'm sure there's lots of stories behind that.
Yeah. So as I said, I fell in love with the ocean when I moved to Hawaii, and my first open ocean crossing was in an outrigger canoe, a 6-man outrigger canoe. So I did long distance racing around the island of Oahu and ended up it's the world championship long distance outrigger canoe race. So we paddled from Molokai to Oahu, and that was my first open ocean experience. And when I lived in New Zealand, I met a friend who helped me remember I knew deep down somehow that I would always sail around the world. And I have no idea. That dream wasn't even really conscious, but it was there. And so when my visa was running out in Australia, I bought a round the world ticket and I went to Australia, and my mission was to sail out of the country. And so I did, and I met a family. I sailed with them, traveled all through Asia for like 6 or 7 months, and have been on boats ever since. My last career was in the private yacht industry. So I managed the interior of private yachts and traveled the world working on those.
So that's become obviously a nice hot conversation with all the shows and the reality shows that are out there now, because I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, the private yacht industry is phenomenal. It is such a beautiful peek inside the lives of the world's wealthiest. And it's a good look at what money can do in the world. And there's a lot of people that seem to have some sort of negativity or some sort of bias against wealthy people, although we all want to be wealthy, but it was such a beautiful peek into what money can do in the world. And it was so creative for me personally because when you remove money from a situation, anything is possible. So you can create the most beautiful, elaborate dinners. You can have the most luxurious trips. You can do anything. You can give back so much to a community that you've been influenced by or you see a need for. And I saw how much, well, these people, like the owners and the guests on board, how many people they really employed, not just in their businesses, but for their day-to-day lives, and how many of us were living extremely wealthy lives through their wealth. And so it was beautiful, not to mention, the beautiful wine and food and places in the world that I got to experience. It just was a really beautiful insight into the abundance in the world.
What a great perspective. Now, if you don't mind me asking, how did you kind of go full circle back to the US? And are you planning on exploring that avenue again?
I probably won't get back into the private yacht industry because it is extremely demanding. I'm at a point in life where I want to be able to determine or choose where I'm living. And so my career pivot came when I became the sole caregiver for my son. So I went from being a global nomad to the sole caregiver. And so I returned back to Illinois, which is where my family roots are. So I came back to have support in that transition. And so I've been here I am still here, and I've been here while he's been in school. And he just started going away to school this year. So I now am back at a point where I'm not tied to one specific geographical location. So I am ready to get back into the world and start moving about again.
So when we were chatting earlier, you had said, really the empowerment behind designing your life.
Oh, I think as an adult, as a growing individual, as a free spirit, I sometimes also use that as a way to not make decisions and to just go with the flow and not really necessarily being intentional about many things in life. And so I lived a brilliant life. I did so many things and it was absolutely wonderful. However, I realized there was something missing. And that part was missing was my intention and who am I really without all of these things. And so I've learned to separate my identity from what I do and started to figure out, what is this life that I desire to create? How do I want to design my life? And so it's been over the last couple of years, really, truly getting down into the nuts and bolts of what's important to me. How do I want to go about the rest of my life? What are the things that I wish to leave behind? And what are the things I wish to carry forth? So it comes down to intentionally choosing what it is I want to do, who I want to spend time with, and where I want to be.
Oh, that's so powerful. So powerful. I feel like in life, you come to that point, and I don't know if it's necessarily midlife per se, to date myself as well, but you start really thinking of 20s, 30s, early 40s, and where am I at now? And what's the next half look like?
Yeah, absolutely. And it really is just evaluating life on my life. How do I fit in this world, and what world do I want to fit into? And so it really is, I guess, choosing the perspective and stepping into the ways that I may not have been living the truest, purest, highest version of myself. So yeah, it's like a new life, a new earth, a new life, a new being, a new awakening, whatever that is. But how do I want to be better and my best moving forward?
The best version of you.
Yes, absolutely.
Love that. Well, one thing that we talk about on this podcast is money memories, which I feel like that kind of goes along with some things that we've already chatted too. What's a money memory that you have from childhood or younger years that really helped mold your relationship to money as an adult?
this a positive or a negative money memory?
Definably however you want it to be and whatever you're comfortable with sharing.
Well, I think honestly, one that really I could see the effects most was growing up. I had two sisters. I grew up in a very rural farming community. It's a very traditional sort of lifestyle, almost old-fashioned, so to speak, and where, the men earned the money and the women took care of the men. And there wasn't really always a lot of value in the women taking care of everything behind the scenes. And the men, the men were in charge, the men made decisions. And so being female and raised in that, my dad didn't want us to work when we were growing up. He said, which was beautiful because he said, you are going to work enough in your life. You don't need to work in high school. And which is great, except that also my interpretation of that is a man will provide. And so, I've had a lot of relationships where the money was off, and it's because my understanding of that, or my interpretation of that. And it also showed men have more value with the money is value, male is value. So there were a number of trickle downs that sort of came from that. And I also had an understanding and a knowing then that if I were male, I would have a job, like I wouldn't be given this grace. So that's probably one of the money memories that has shaped my life the most dramatically, to be honest.
Wow. Thank you for sharing and being raw and vulnerable there. Do you, obviously, I mean, with all that you've done and accomplished in your life so far, you've changed that narrative. How did you go about doing that?
I think it's, I swung the pendulum very far one direction as we, I don't know if you're like me, but as I tend to do, like just go really far the other way. I sort of was like, well, I will make my own way. I will do my own thing. I, am independent and can stand on my own 2 feet, and watch me not I'm not going to cook. I'm not going to do these things. There were so many ways that I was just defiantly like, no, I'm not doing that. And so then it swung back the other way when I was in relationship and was in a role where I wasn't really earning much income. And so it was like I tried to be the person I thought I was supposed to be, and then tried to fit into this role that I had so defiantly said no to before, and figured out that didn't work either. And so now I've come back to the middle of like, oh, okay, I can stand on my own 2 feet. I can earn my own income. I can build my own wealth, and I can also be in relationships. So it's been a very encompassing lot of different avenues to help me get to the place of balance. And I feel like I'll always still have I'll teeter one direction or the other just because it's so deeply rooted in my core. It's like there will be layers of that to remove.
And I think the key word, and that's a challenge for me too, right, is that balance word. Trying to integrate balance into everything in your own life and keep designing and becoming the best version of you.
Yeah. And learning to receive without the receiving be tied to my worth.
Oh,
I think that's probably like the greatest realization for me pretty recently. It was like, oh, I can receive, but it's because others also joyfully give. And it's nothing to do with, if I need it or don't need it, or how it has nothing to do with me. It's just my ability to receive, which I think is also, wealth is that as well. You have to be able to receive in order to grow.
Yeah, it's a tool. It's a tool that has energy behind it.
Absolutely.
So another thing we like to touch on is financial infidelities. And those can be defined differently for each individual as well. What's a financial infidelity that you've either experienced or that you've seen or heard?
A financial infidelity, as there are 2 that sort of come to mind. And the first one is, I've noticed with myself in relationship, I know that almost every woman I know does this, to be honest. So many women I know, when they make a purchase and they're not sure if their partner or spouse will, for some reason, it's hidden. It's like, I'll buy it and I'll just put it in the closet like it was always there, or, or just not mention that, or, just take the tags off, like whatever that is. And I'm not sure why, as women, I don't know any man that does that, and maybe it's because that's not my circle and the conversation that we have, but so many women I know do that. And I do it myself, I've done it myself. And so that's probably one I have practiced and I've seen others practice. And then the other one for me would be, I used to say, oh, I'm good with money, but I wasn't. I didn't know. I just felt like I was supposed to be good. And so I was dishonest with myself in what my knowledge was, or dishonest with the fact that I needed some help and I needed some education and I needed to get a handle on things. So I just would say, oh, I know what's happening. I'm around wealthy people. I totally know how this works. And yet I would be like, oh, wait, hold on. I have some debt, or how am I going to pay for this thing? And I'm like, oh, maybe I don't really know, but I told myself I did.
Both of those, I think, resonate with a lot of people, a lot, because I think we're told to be empowered and to move forward and to figure it out. But sometimes we don't have it figured out. I think that's a tough one. And now I feel like financial literacy is definitely out there more than it has been, but I don't think it's still enough. I think that when we've chatted through, topics before, there's a seat at the table for everyone and there's no silly questions along the way. But I do feel, I feel that you're spot on, because I think that there's still kind of that taboo of like, that's a silly question. I don't want to ask that. I don't want to navigate through that because that makes me look like I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. And there's such shame around it and guilt. And it's like, well, how do you know? It doesn't matter if you're 21 years old or if you're 41 or 51. If you don't know something about money or how it works, then there's shame and guilt around it. And I don't know if that's just because the conversation we haven't been able to have a seat at the table in that conversation for a long time as women, or women discuss it amongst women. But for so many generations, women didn't even have access to money. We couldn't get credit cards, we couldn't get mortgages, we couldn't get any of these things. So we're almost, I don't want to say in the infantile stages, but maybe we're like in the pubescent stages of being able to have these conversations. And, you don't know what you don't know. And so I think one of the greatest, sort of hurdles that we're overcoming in being able to have financial literacy as women is just having the freedom to ask the questions and to be in community with people that are also learning, and removing the stigma of not knowing.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. That's where that seat at the table, like I say that, and I've said that to you many times too, but that seat at the table is for everyone. It doesn't matter what you have or you don't have. Like the goal is to get everyone to, get to the point financially where they can, meet their goals, right? Getting people consistently doing the right things and on the right track. Like, that sits so heavy with my heart, because that is the reason I do what I do. That is the exact reason I do what I do. So folks can find that empowerment internally, feel comfortable with what they're doing, know what they're doing, and just embrace that. But knowing that everyone has a seat, everyone.
Yeah. And it's the root, there's energetically, there's so many things. Getting your energetics right in the 3D realm of money, its ripple effects throughout your entire life are huge. It's not your core, but it's the base. And so it's part of the foundation of living greater across all aspects of life. So it's so important to be able to have the conversation, ask the questions, find support. Someone once likened it, like, it's like having a leaky bucket. You keep filling it up, but it's just leaking out everywhere. And it's because we don't even know what is a whole, what is whole and complete. And so it's we're getting there. But as far as women, we have a little bit of ways to go sometimes.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
But again, a good reminder for everyone, no matter what you have or don't have, it's have a conversation. Find that person that you're comfortable with. Talk with myself, talk with a wealth advisor, talk with someone to make sure that you're doing the right things to achieve what your goals are. And there's granted, like some people do have minimums of you have to have a certain dollar amount to talk to somebody. I don't. And I don't for that reason specifically, because these conversations are so valuable. And how are you going to get to that next point? And how are you going to maintain and grow wealth if you're not coming to the table, having a seat at the table and having that conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that, I think the generation that's sort of, and currently in their 20s and 30s, like they're being raised in a different environment. They're being raised having these conversations. They're being raised seeing amazing female entrepreneurs. Their exposure to wealth at young ages and in the hands of women is the thing that will transform the planet. It's like we share our wealth. We expand our communities. We do so much as the receivers of wealth. And so it's so important. And there is great change happening. And it's brilliant because I look at my son and I know that, my wish is that the woman that if he pairs with in life, if he so chooses, has that, I don't want to say new age, but this modern understanding that we are all capable of creating this abundant life.
Beautiful. And I think with you and your guidance and your gentle nudging of design your own life, like what a beautiful life moving forward.
Yeah, I hope so. That's my wish. I've made great mistakes and I have, hopefully learn from most of them and continue to reiterate and grow and it's new for me kind of in life to be like, whoa, I really sucked at that. Didn't handle that well. Let's do that again. So I feel good with that. So I hope that is something that he can take to heart and grow with as well.
All part of the journey.
Yeah, 100%.
All part of the journey.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And as we start to wrap the conversation, one thing I like to ask is what are tips and or tricks that you use to utilize money in your household?
Something that I practice is when I come across, whether it's a coin on the ground, extra 20 in my wallet, or a gift from someone, I intentionally and consciously say, I attract money in expected and unexpected ways. And it's almost a mantra where I'm like, I attract money in expected and unexpected ways. And it's a way for me to show the appreciation for the wealth that comes to me and through me, and also an awareness of the fact that money can come in a myriad of ways as long as you're open to receive.
Beautiful. Well, thank you again. Thank you for spending time. It's been just lovely getting to know you.
Yes, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
And hopefully you all will join us in the next Platinum Talks Wealth podcast.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, Platinum Talks Wealth, please subscribe and share. For more information about Jennifer Rogers Markwell or Platinum Wealth Management, please visit www.platinumwealth.net. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member of FINRA and SIPC. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. The guest speakers and their companies are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Platinum Wealth Management.